Happy Taco Thursday. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Aaron B. So I got my co-host in the building, but we got to show love to our sponsor real quick before we get everything started, and that is What a Clean Solution. Need to get your carpets clean, couches, and tile and grout, moving in or moving out, or need to get that place looking brand new. Call What a Clean Solutions, a family-owned mobile cleaning service that can clean anything from a small carpet to even making your car or truck look brand new. Give them a call at 210-790-1410 and use promo code TNT for 5% off your total cleaning. That is promo code TNT for 210-790-1410 for 5% off. And now I'm going to pass the ball to my co-host, Shane Carter.
Okay, so as we put it out there today, we got not one but two special guests here to talk the state of the Cowboys as we enter the bye week. We will have another one later on in the show, but first I want to show love to someone, and he knows I'm gonna try and get on the show for a while, and we finally found time for him to get it on here. He's the guy whose career I watched blossom to where it is today. You can see the hat. He is one of the lead NFL news writers for Pro Football Network, as well as most people know his face and his voice as one of the lead hosts for First and 10, part of the Blogging the Boys. It's a podcast on Blogging the Boys. I should preface that better. Somebody off from his neck of the woods, also known him as a high school sports reporter. Is it?
Yeah, high school and college football up in the New England area.
It's my guy, Tony Catalina. Tony, how you doing, bud?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely, definitely.
I try to have you on forever, but it's always an issue just because you live, in lack of a better word, you live in enemy territory up in the Northeast. And I always find it's funny, and I've asked a lot of people who are from that area before. So it makes sense why Washington fans, Giants fans, and Eagles fans would hate us, but I don't understand why. And you're from Massachusetts, right?
Yeah.
Why Patriots fans and Jets fans and other northeastern teams have hate for us. But not only that, it seems like the cities of Boston, New York, DC, and Philly all just seem to hate each other for anything. They don't have sports, music, culture, whatever it is. Like, why is this? I don't want to say it's a hateful place, but it seems like there's a lot of bitterness unless you're from that certain city.
Yeah, they're all passionate fan bases, right? In the Northeast, yeah. Patriots have had a long history of success, and obviously, New York sports speak for themselves. So it's a lot of passion up here, and that trickles down. And I can see why you're talking about why they might not like the Cowboys, but I think we've seen a little bit in the media this week why people don't like the Cowboys. It's a constant news cycle,
Mm-hmm.
so it's easy to dislike us if you either love us or you hate us, and I think we like it like that.
Speaking of which, someone in this group who recently joined us put out a tweet that has gone viral so far today in regards to how the Cowboys are portrayed by the media. Most of y'all know her as one of the two co-hosts for the growing podcast Bitches Love Sports, as well as one of the Cowboys writers for Inside the Star, a publication I used to write for. She's a roller derby queen, a sports culture analyst, and a sports competition enthusiast. That's what her bio says, by the way. Miss Jazz Money Monet. Jazz, how you doing?
Good. How are y'all today?
Doing
Glad
pretty
to have
good.
you on.
Good. Yeah, I'm not actually going anywhere. I'm in my car because I was trying to get set up. I've been moving, and then I was trying to go somewhere, and I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna go somewhere else. Like the sun's still out. We're good. Um, as far as the topic of people loving and hating the Cowboys, that's actually something that's been really interesting to me as someone who's relatively new to the fan base. I grew up a Saints fan, and when I moved to Austin, well, actually, not even when I moved to Austin, it was more so when I decided to start a podcast, and we started off just being more fans of players who we like. And so we started watching Hard Knocks, and I was a fan of CD in college, but kind of fell off after he drafted. It's just my co-host just fell in love with the team all over again. Well, for me it was all over again. For her, it was her first time ever watching American football. She's from Spain, and she became a Cowboys fan. And I think outside of just like following the team, following the players, the whole dynamic between the team and the sports field in general, it's really unlike anything I've seen for any other sports team ever. And so it's like, on one hand, I kind of understand the sentiment of like, hey, like you love us or hate us, and the fan base likes it. But on the other hand, I do kind of see how players can be frustrated with their coverage, which was what inspired the tweet that I made today. So.
I didn't think you left any crumbs. I thought everything you said was correct. I thought it was respectful. I thought it was accurate. And it's something we've had to deal with is that like it ain't even necessarily that like we want to be we want to be favorites in the media. We just want the same energy brought across the board that they give everybody else, because you can definitely tell that when a analyst has an agenda, they have a favorite, then they're definitely going to favorite that team. That's fine, but the problem is that the exact opposite heads towards us. All the arguments they make for one quarterback, they don't give the same grace to Dak Prescott, the same grace they give to the defense, same grace they give to the head coach, whatever it is. It's always been the Cowboys essentially are the exception to the rule rather than a continuation of it. But I don't want to dig too much into that because we got I think 4 or 5 topics to talk about today. Aaron, start us off, brother.
All right, so we got our first topic is standouts versus the Cowboys versus Chargers game. So I'll go with our first guest. No, we'll go with Jazz.
Ladies first, come on.
Yeah, almost. That's my bad.
For me, there were a lot of standouts in that game for various reasons, and I hope I don't accidentally take anybody else's. But I guess I'll start off with Marquise Bell. I think a lot of people didn't really know what to expect because like the reviews on him have been like kind of mixed. Like people were excited about him for a while, and then throughout the training camp there was like excitement mixed with a little bit of apathy. And so then like when LVE went down, like there was a lot of discussion of like, okay, well, we need to just find somebody else. Like we don't have the people in house to handle this situation. And so I think a lot of people are really impressed with his tenacity and just like his speed. I think sometimes he gets counted out because of his size, but I think he proved that like, yeah, I can get the job done. Like we haven't seen him like in every possible scenario or situation, but I think he proved that like, okay, he brings enough to the table to where we shouldn't like really freak out if we have to put him in the game, you know? Um, and on offense, I don't know if this sounds like way too cookie cutter or cliche, but like I really liked a lot of the decisions that Dak Prescott made. So yeah, like I know he's a quarterback, so he shouldn't be a standout, but because of the way he handled that game, he was a standout, especially after listening to Brian Schottenheimer describe some of the factors that went into the decisions that he made, like when to run, when not to run, how they had to adjust on the fly for some of those plays, and just knowing that all of those things were on his mind as he was making those decisions. Like, yeah, that's really impressive to me.
So Tony.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you brought up Jazz brought up Marquise Bell because that was somebody that I definitely wanted to make sure he got some praise. I don't think he surprised himself. I don't think he surprised Dan Quinn, but I think a lot of people kind of got introduced to who Marquise Bell is and what he can bring to this defense. But the low hanging fruit to me, CeeDee Lamb. So I'm gonna kind of step to the side and I'm gonna talk about one of the big men inside, and it'll be Oso Odigizua. Finished with 6 pressures, 3 run stops. The guy is really ascending really well. I think he's somebody that isn't probably a household name just yet, but everybody in Cowboys Nation has kind of seen his career path, and it's kind of grown. And he's really a big piece of this interior defensive line. We had talked about bringing in Mozzie Smith, and we got Jonathan Hankins back in free agency, but Oso Odigizua he's winning. At the snap quickly. He's doing a lot of things. I know it's crazy to talk about, but I know there's been some comparisons between his work ethic, and he kind of learned from Aaron Donald and what he had done in the offseason, and he's kind of putting that into principle. So for me, I just want to step in and talk about a guy that probably is his time's probably coming in the national spotlight, but we can at least jump on it early here.
I'll let you go, Shane.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously when I recognize Marquise Bell, he was, I think, the team's defensive MVP for the week. But I mean, if you're someone who Jazz pointed out, who didn't know exactly who he was and you weren't really paying attention, this is a guy who had a great preseason, especially just from a tackling and being where you need to be standpoint. One of the key factors in being a good NFL linebacker ain't necessarily like how many tackles you get, but it's like, can you read where the play is going and be there every single time? And that's something that he was really good at dissecting the play and being there where he needed to be. But the same can be said for his linebacker mate, Damone Clark. we talked about like me and Aaron talked about last year how when Damone Clark came in as a fifth round pick, who I projected to be like a late second, early third, but then the spinal fusion happened that obviously affected his draft stock. We didn't know if he'd play. He comes in and he takes over as that starting inside linebacker, and he plays more like this sort of like sub will linebacker, not quite what a traditional will would do, but since they run primarily a two linebacker set, he does kind of play that. And now he's asked to come in and play Mike, not with Leighton Vander Esch out for the next 4 to 6 weeks, and he really didn't seem to miss a beat. Actually, he looked a little bit more comfortable because and Tony knows this because I've been on the show with Phantom and Rabble Rouser, and I talked about how his speed is the main reason why he plays the will linebacker position, just because he's able to dissect and attack so quickly. And that can actually be an attribute that helps well at the Mike, because if you're the Mike linebacker, you're essentially the guy who has to diagnose it the fastest, because you're seeing the quarterback eye to eye and seeing where it goes every single time. And going from one linebacker position to the other can affect you if you don't have that skill set. He went there seamlessly. In fact, I would say he actually may have played his best game of the season. Him and Marquise Bell have played, I would say, the best game for two linebackers, not just one or the other, but for both linebacker positions that we've seen so far this season. Not to say that any of the games that they blew somebody out, whether it was the Jets or the Giants, they didn't have a great game from the position. But in terms of just that position by itself, I don't think there was a game where both the Mike and the Will each played at such a high level together that it was that noticeable. So we got to show love for our second-year Tiger.
Yes, sir. So on my last one, y'all definitely have some great points and some standouts. Mine is actually Tony Pollard, who has some really good plays, not as well in the receiving game, but also being as a pass blocker. A lot of people don't see Tony Pollard as a pass blocker making those key blocks at times, because he may not be the biggest guy, but he's actually around 210, 215. But there was a play when you had Dak where it looked like he was going for a sack. He broke out of that tackle, and you seen out of all the trash, you seen Tony Pollard break out for that big catch for 60 yards, and he almost broke out for a touchdown. But if he could have gotten to that second gear, I think he'd have went in for that touchdown. But I think that when it comes to the offense, they need to utilize more Tony Pollard in the outside, in the flats, and then in quick screens and stuff. Not just that between the tackler type of running back. I'm almost kind of jumping the gun with who I want to see in free agency that we have, but I think we just need to utilize Tony Pollard's footwork and his quickness for the best when it comes to the running game.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually also, that was going to be like one of my other ones. That's why I stopped myself from listening to many people. I really liked what I saw from Tony when he came to the pass blocking. That was impressive.
So our next topic is trade prospects. What are some trade prospects? We'll keep the same rotation going on. So, Jazz, who's your trade prospect that you're looking at in this for the
I'm gonna be
deadline?
honest. I'm gonna listen to y'all on this because like I don't have any. Like the whole trade and free agency thing is like one thing that I haven't gotten that much into. Like I listen to what other people say to like stay up to speed on what the rumors are, but I'm not one of those people who like, oh yeah, I have a list of people that the Cowboys need to bring in. I'm like, no, I'm observing.
That's all good. So, Tony, who do you have?
I mean, for me, it's it's too tough to kind of narrow it down to a single player, right? I think it's understanding what this team may need, right? I think we feel good about what Stephon Gilmore is doing. He stepped into a tough position that he did not expect to when Trayvon Diggs went down. So I think, you could look at cornerback and see if that, you can find a way to improve the cornerback position. Ultimately, you can always look for offensive line help. Now, that's really hard to find. I think everybody across the league is really struggling to find depth. It's just a tough position to have enough, able bodies. Not every team has like 5 good starters, never mind having quality backups. So you can always try to find offensive line help whenever you can get it. For me, it's really a linebacker is another one. I think we talked about Marquise Bell, and I think he's going to be able to quiet that urgency there because of the way he played. And if that continues, then it's just another one of those Dan Quinn specials. But if you're asking me, it's tough to pinpoint a play because you know how it goes. Somebody will come up that we weren't thinking about, and Jerry will flip a 6th or a 7th round pick for him, and the next thing he's in the rotation. So if you're looking for anything specifically for me, it's probably cornerback or linebacker that I'm looking to fix on.
What do you guys say?
Well, I think offensive line is a position that not a lot of teams are really going to be just shipping out, just because they're so hard, especially in today's game, to find really good ones. If you're better off, like if you really want an offensive lineman, really just adding one to through free agency, add them to the practice squad, developing them as a just in case necessity. Unless the team is just like in a full rebuild mode and they want to dump some salary cap money and they're getting rid of their all pro, whoever that is. But the Cowboys don't really need that just yet. I still think that. I have my own opinions as like who the starting five actually should be, but that's not the topic. The topic is a player that we want to see traded for. The most common name that I see out there right now is Pat Surtain of the Broncos, because the Broncos look like they're ready to not necessarily implode, but move players along into what would be the next rebuild. And while that would be amazing, I don't really see the Broncos doing that just because they have an all-pro corner at a rookie salary in the middle of only his third season. You would think that would actually be a rebuild piece. If I'm looking for a player, it's someone who's on the cheap, who could potentially be a starter for you next year, but is only going to be on a contract this year, and you can move off the next year. That's sort of the Cowboys special. Someone who's only going to be a rental who you could potentially have a long future with later on. And the name that popped up for me was actually Chicago Bears cornerback Jalen Johnson. Now, he has had some foot problems in the last couple of weeks, but he's played the last two, and the Bears have been like really reluctant to play him and Eddie Jackson and Jaquan Brisker, just because I think they know this season might be just another cog in their rebuild wheel. We don't even know what the quarterback's going to look like, even though Justin Fields has looked a lot better in the recent weeks. But we don't even know if they're still in rebuild or if they're about to do a whole new rebuild. That's to be decided later on. But that's a cornerback that I can see them getting, just because he's a guy who you would likely not have as your number one cornerback, but would probably elevate your game to the point where you could get Jordan Lewis out of the nickel, because he has become kind of a liability, a boomer bust type cornerback in there. Put Deron Bland back in that slot position, and then probably take the pressure off Stephon Gilmore, because it seems too often he's put up against the number one guy. And when it comes to north and south routes, he's fine. He can stay with them. But when the receivers go across his face, he gets burnt. He's a little bit slow nowadays. We have to admit that. Jalen Johnson is someone who is on his rookie deal and is in his fourth season. So at the end of the year, if you want to cut ties with him, you can cut ties with him. But he would definitely improve the cornerback room to where it is now and allow you to play Stephon Gilmore and Deron Bland back in the positions they were originally supposed to be when Trevon Diggs was there before he got hurt.
So I'm gonna stick the corner. There's another guy that I was looking at, and yeah, I actually seen you brought him up, and that was Roger McCreary out of Tennessee. When you think of the Tennessee Titans defense, they're this tough, gritty type of defense. They may not put up the stats and everything, but they play hard-nosed defense. And one of the things I like about McCreary, he's a willing tackler. And another thing is like his hand-eye coordination is on point. It's just he's not the most athletic corner, but he can get like a press where he can
he can tackle. He's a great tackler.
That's one of the main things is. And I actually looked at one of his stats is when it was against like three receivers that he kept under 50 yards, and that was Michael Thomas in week 1 with 2 catches for 17 yards. And then the next one is Keenan Allen, who we just recently played. He kept him for 37 yards and a pass deflection. And then the week 4, he played against Tyler Boyd of the Bengals. He kept him under 23. Adding another young corner to a young secondary, then you could put him in the nickel. I know he got a little bit of outside in his game as well.
Keeping the nickel. Keeping the nickel. He's better there.
I feel you. So, and then one of the biggest plus when it comes to the financials, he's on his rookie deal, and you're looking at I think he won't be a free agent until 2025, so he can at least get two good years before you'd have to think about a contract or moving on if he's actually fits into this defense. So that's who I got on my trade prospects. Our next one is free agent considerations. Is there any free agent considerations y'all are thinking about right now?
I'm looking at the guests first. No. Jazz, Tony.
Same answer. Free agents and trades. I'm observing others.
Yeah, I mean it's tough, right? This is the time of year where there isn't a ton out there, right? So it's if they were high quality, not to diminish anybody, but if they were of high quality, they're probably on a roster, at least a practice squad of some. I mean, we just saw, I'm gonna throw a stray. We just saw the Eagles resurrect, Julio Jones. So it's like, those are the type of moves that what are you going to do? I think the Rashad Evans one is an interesting one that the Cowboys just did. And, getting something from him would be a really interesting piece. It's just, how the Cowboys are, man. They love their guys. Probably more so this year than any time. They've been a little bit more advantageous or a little bit more eager to do outside moves. But again, it's such a wide pool, right? And you don't know how these teams and Will McClay and the scouts value or look at these guys. They may look at them totally different than we do. And, they have, at least in my opinion, earn our trust, right? So if they go out there, they don't make a move, they're comfortable with who they have. I feel good in the player development that they have in there. So it's tough to just give you one specific name. But like I said, much like I said, the trade pieces, those are the same positions I would look to address in free agency. And you had touched on it, Shane. Offensive line is tough. You're not going to find it. You're not going to find quality there. Linebacker, they've already dipped into the free agent pool with Rashad Evans. So this, cornerback, it's, we saw Josh Norman get signed. So it's just like, how thin it is. It's a tough market right now. You try to hope that you've developed and drafted well to keep you through the transgressions of injuries and the end of season stuff here.
So I can only think of one name of a free agent that would sign it. It's only just because it's a need that we hadn't really looked at as something that we miss, and that's running back. So I really don't want to trade for a running back just because anytime someone dumps off a running back, a lot of times it's a running back who's a contract that's on its in the middle of its legs. You don't often get trades for rookie running backs that are high powered. Like Jonathan Taylor is one that comes to mind, but like that still would cost you a ton in draft capital. And plus running backs, if they are a commodity position, there's something that you can go out and get for relatively cheap. And so the name that comes to mind for me right away is Leonard Fournette. And the reason for that is just because one dimension in this offense that we miss, whether we want to admit it or not, is the ability to score in short yardage situations in the red zone. That's what we had Zeke for, was those short yardage, those third and short, fourth and short, those goal line situations. Tony Pollard, I love him to death, but he is, as even though Aaron said he's 210, 215, he plays a lot lighter. Right now, their biggest back is Hunter Luepke, who was really more of a fullback, who they've kind of used a little bit as H-back. I'm not really sure. And they haven't really given him the ball that much, even though it would make sense to give him the ball on those short yardage situations. He might not be ready. They might not trust him, whatever it is. And even though Tony Pollard is definitely going to be the lead dog for this season, he played much better when he was a true 1B, when Zeke was the 1A. That they had more of an even split, 12 to 15 carries, and then a couple pass receptions each way. But right now, defenses know that if Tony ain't on the field, it sucks. But they don't have to take the other running back that seriously. Right now, the second biggest running threat on the Cowboys offense, which is fine, but they don't use him all that much, is Dak Prescott. Right now, they don't have as much of a running game because you can't really divide it up the way you want it to. And if they did add Fournette, and they only gave him say 8 to 10 carries a game, and he's primarily going to be a short yardage guy, that's fine. Plus, with only 11 games left in the season, you have the bye week to get him up to down this offense. It's a very simple thing to do. It's an easy position to adapt to. And a power back is actually something that can help you overcome your offensive line woes if the guy has a good lower center of gravity type push. One thing we can't argue about this offensive line is from guard, center, guard. That's definitely the strength of it, and it can make up for the tackle dispositions that they have. You can run him through the 2, 3, 4, and 5 holes without much of a problem. And even though he ain't going to be the LSU back that everyone wants him to be. He ain't even going to be the guy that we saw in Tampa who was, looked more like the guy that people thought he was when he was coming out. But he's definitely going to be a cheap option that could fill a dimension that we haven't even thought of that probably would help at least alleviate some of those red zone woes.
I didn't have my volume on. I was about to try to say something. Because from last year, we were the first in red zone when we had Zeke, and now we're at the bottom at 28. Adding a guy like a Leonard Fournette would definitely be a good addition. And then now you could have plays where you have Hunter Luepke, now you have Leonard Fournette, where they can make those big pushes for those little short yardage. Because like you were saying, that like we don't have that 1A. We got like a C type of. We don't utilize Rico that at times. You'll see like there'll be some like, okay, Rico got a little power to his game, and we haven't heard from Deuce since week 1. To be honest with you,
well, he was a healthy scratch this last game, but like he hadn't been near as effective as he was in the preseason. Yeah. And the problem is they don't use him right. He's an in space player. They're using him like a traditional running back. Yeah. He's an in space weapon, and that it's frustrating because like it ain't for lack of speed. It's just
Yeah.
there's a reason why 5'5", 5'6", 175-pound guys don't typically make it in the league. It's because teams don't know how to use them.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense why they were trying to do like the traditional way. Is like, I guess because they never seen a 5'5" running back, but logic says, okay, this guy has the quickness where you could put him out in space, but that's neither here or there. But our next one is, what is y'all's thoughts on Dak's performance and the offensive moving forward? So we'll go with Jazz. So what do you got?
Um, that's a complicated question. Overall, I'm satisfied though. Overall, I'm happy. I think there's a lot that the offense needs to work on. Um, and it's really easy to resort to like, okay, play calling is the issue. That seems to be kind of like the talking point. That the way Mike McCarthy is running the offense just isn't really getting the job done. But it's like the more that I listen to like players and coordinators talk about the different things that they're facing, I'm kind of like, okay, maybe it is coming together a little bit more than we think. Maybe the Cowboys are dealing with a little bit more of that whole idea of teams show up differently for the Cowboys, is I think how Micah Parsons put it one time. So overall, I'm satisfied. I feel like they did a good job of bouncing back in the Chargers game, which was an interesting thing happened after that game where like somebody put out a tweet that was like, "Oh, Dak Prescott was sensational," you know. And all I said was I was like, "Well, sensational isn't the word that I would use." And I wasn't trying to say that Dak Prescott was bad. Like I think he did great during the game, but it's almost like the perception of Dak Prescott's performance depends on like what you choose to focus on. Because what I realized in my comments was like, okay, the people who are saying he's sensational are people who really believe that like he had to 100% save that game and he had to overcome Mike McCarthy's play calling, and they're looking at him as like, oh, everything good that happened was Dak's improvisation and that was sensational. And then the people who are like, okay, he did good, there are people who are like, all right, let's think back to some of the best performances that we've seen from Dak Prescott, and if that's the bar for sensational, we didn't see that. Like we saw him running, we like having a running and passing touchdown in a regular season game on the road is something that hasn't been done in a while. The decisions that he made, like I said, escaping some of the escape situations that he was in, yeah, really great, really good job. And so that's why I'm leaning more towards like, okay, I'm satisfied. I think they're doing good because that's the direction they're trending. But I do think that we're going to need to see a little bit more in order to be like more confident and comfortable with the idea of, okay, this team actually is still the Super Bowl contender that they kept saying they were during the offseason.
You want me to go?
Yeah,
All right,
my
cool. Yeah,
mouth's
no,
acting up.
you're good. No, so I mean, realistically, your Jazz says it wasn't sensational, but that's because we've seen Dak set the bar. I mean, we've seen him with 450 passing yards and 5 touchdowns. Like he's done sensational things, but what he did was important, right? Like I think a lot of people within Cowboys Nation, really stung to take that loss from the 49ers. And the way I kind of stepped back and thought about it was, I think I'm a boxing guy. Like I think styles make fights. And I think the 49ers are a matchup problem for the Cowboys. Like if it's been 3 years in a row, like they just haven't found the answer yet. Maybe it comes in January, maybe it doesn't. But I knew that they weren't as bad as that performance was. But I knew it was going to be a tough week. That's just what comes with it. That's what Micah was talking about. Like it's the expectations are different. How they're going to talk about you is different. But what I will say is Dak Prescott, while he wasn't sensational based on his own standards, was everything the Cowboys needed from him, right? He used his legs when he had to. He had his longest touchdown run of, I believe, his career. I mean, 18 yards was like the longest time he's ever had it. So, he did a lot of good things. I mean, he got Brandon Cooks more involved than he had at this point. And Brandon Cooks, 4 receptions, 30, 48 yards and a touchdown, like big, important touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb, 7 receptions, 117 yards. Like these are some of the numbers you're hoping to see. The one thing I want to change about it is they're making Michael Gallup a focal point. And I think that's more about Dak's trust with him. And I wonder if that tapers off the more that the production doesn't come with that. But I don't think Mike McCarthy is as bad as many people. It's much like anything, right? It's never as good. It's never as bad. The conversation about Mike McCarthy's offense, it's evolving. It's going to get better. I think there's going to be more comfortability. You see them stretching the field a little bit. I mean, the whole demeanor about Michael Gallup, and I just brought him up, and the whole offense as a whole, if he comes down and grabs that touchdown, that Dak stuffed in the triple coverage down the seam, like the whole demeanor changes, so there were signs of life. I knew they weren't as bad as they played against the 49ers. It kind of re-energized me. And I think it re-energized the Cowboys Nation to know that, the wins have been tremendous. The losses have been pretty crazy as well. I think we were able to just go in, fight play a good opponent. I know people are going to talk down on the Chargers, but that was a quality opponent. Justin Herbert gets a lot of respect, and he should, because he's a good quarterback. They went in there, they handled business on the road on Monday night, and you feel really good about some of the things. Now, the bye week, in my opinion, comes at a perfect time. You get in there, you get back in the playbook, you figure out what works, what doesn't work, and you try to come out refreshed. And, I think the Cowboys are, if they're not there yet, they're definitely going in the right steps to get this offense to where they need it to be.
Shane?
What's crazy about that game is that if Michael Gallup catches that pass, Dak has 3 total touchdowns and over 300 yards passing, which is something that a lot of people would consider overall a great game. It wasn't his best game. I mean, but like Tony said, we've seen him throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns multiple times. But that was also when he wasn't pigeonholed to an offense that would that pissed Aaron Rodgers off enough. And Aaron Rodgers is as weird as he is, he's never really mad. He's just less chill, if you want to put it lightly. With Dak though, what made it a great game is, and Jazz used a good word, standard. What made it a great game was because the standard of what we've seen this offense look like this year has been the right word for this offense is it's outdated. It's old. It was around when it was succeeding. Reagan was in office. Okay, since then teams have learned to adapt to it, and the better teams have learned to take the offense and sort of elevate it as the times have changed. The offense itself was predicated on short passes and moving the ball, and Mike McCarthy seems almost content just to keep that going, even if it means they kick a field goal every single time. It's really irritating just because we have, I would argue, a top 10 quarterback on this team, and one of, if not his best receiving core, since we had a healthy Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, and Randall Cobb. That was I would argue their best receiving trio that Dak had healthy at one moment, just because this was pre-injury Michael Gallup. And Tony brought a good point. The trust of Michael Gallup is a little off, just because what we just saw from this last game is that when you put your trust in someone like Brandon Cooks, good things happen. When you force the ball to CeeDee Lamb, good things happen. Bad things have happened or almost happened the last 2 weeks. Michael Gallup was responsible for one of those interceptions that happened against the Niners, and he almost had a wide open he was in his hands, a touchdown that was almost another tip interception. And we saw that happen, I think, 2 or 3 times last year. And so as much as I love Michael Gallup, I'm starting to lose more and more faith in him every single game, just because he does less to inspire me and more to have me check over the cap to see what the price would be if we cut him in the offseason. And when it comes to Dak, what we liked was that Jazz talked about his improvisational skills, his ability to improvise and move, and the ability to actually break tackles in the pocket rather than just take those sacks and get hit. That's what made it so impressive, just because that was much more reminiscent of the Dak that we've all grown to know and love. And it seemed like ever since the injury, he's been kind of, I don't want to say scared, but reluctant to take off and run. But yeah, that was his longest touchdown run of his career. He has 27 touchdown runs, all within 20 yards, but 27 touchdown runs nonetheless. That's, by the way, another way they can help out with the red zone woes is use Dak's legs more. But it wasn't a great game, but it was the game that we needed, because we saw what worked and how Dak needs to play, how Dak needs to be put out there in order to help this offense succeed. Because the way they've been using him in the first couple of weeks up until this game has made him look less than what we know he actually plays to, because we know the ability's there, but the play calling and the lack of ingenuity has kept this offense to a point where, as talented as it is, look like first round exits type offenses.
Like a lot of y'all are saying, like one of the things that it's been pretty much, he had a solid game. It's not the greatest, but he utilized we kind of got to see like in the first years of Dak where he utilized his feet, and I think that's the benefit of having Dak on the team. But like when it came to the injury, he's kind of been a little bit reluctant on the type of running. But trying to making moves like in play action or bootlegs, I think that would be key to Dak's success when it comes to getting more involved with Cooks more than with Gallup. Gallup has dropped a lot of important catches, and they were like catchable catches. They weren't like overthrown. Why don't we get Cooks involved? Because he had a really solid career, had 6 years of over 1,000 yards. Why don't we get him more involved like we did this game? And then CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is one of those guys that you can rely on. And hopefully we can get more getting the over reliable type of style with Jake Ferguson, who we can get involved in the receiving game, but it just needs to see more improvement in his game. But I just want to see how we utilize Pollard more in the outside, more than just trying to force him to be the RB1 where you're trying to do the in between tackles. And maybe we should add RB1 to a 1B as well. I don't know if it's Leonard Fournette, maybe there's running back I'm not thinking about, but it's just like we need to have a good solid run game.
You know, if I can add one more piece about the Dak Prescott thing, he had said a couple years ago post injury that he was picking and choosing his spots to use his legs. He understood that he's super important to this offense, and a run. I think he mentioned like losing me in week 4 from a diving for a first down or something like that is not worth it, right? And you saw something like that happen in the Giants game when broke his ankle and the season was derailed as a result of it. But what I take from that is how he decided to use his legs last week or Monday tells you how important that game was to them, right? Like it was he said it. This is somebody who said like I'm using my legs sparingly when we need it. Okay, well, he was able to take off, get an 18-yard touchdown, be mobile in the pocket. So I think the team looked at what 3-3 looked like and knew that they couldn't get there. They had to be 4-2, and I think Dak Prescott stepped up and elevated his game. And I think that's the sensational part of it, is that he chose to like be all in, because ultimately the Cowboys can go 16-0 in the regular season, 17-0 in the regular season. Nobody cares, right? It's what do you do in January? Ultimately, that's the standard, and that's whether it's fair or not, how the Cowboys are judged.
Yeah, agreed. And I really like the point Shane brought up about the offense being outdated, because I mean that really is one of the most frustrating things about it. Just as a fan, like I said, I started this podcast just being a fan of players and talking about who I like best and what I like about them. And it's making some of my players look bad, honestly. Like there are people out there who really think that Dak Prescott can't be trusted as a quarterback because of how this play calling is going. And they're just assuming like, oh, if Mike McCarthy could trust Dak Prescott to do more, then he would, call the plays that way. And so they're literally just assuming, well, Dak Prescott must be untrustworthy. He must be turnover prone, just like we thought, even though he wasn't before last season. And they're just drawing all kinds of conclusions. And I feel like this game that just happened against the Chargers was like proof to everybody that like, no, Dak Prescott still has not only, throwing skills, but also decision making skills that could really lend themselves to a more dynamic offense. But we just need to see that happen more often by design. You listen to Schottenheimer talk about it, and it really almost sounds like a situation where it was like, okay, well, because of certain things that the offense was doing, it opened up these not the offense, certain things that the defense was doing, with those edges set really far out. It opened up these soft B gaps. So Dak Prescott was able to take advantage in a couple of different ways, right? And it's like, okay, well, now we know that he can throw the ball deep. He has targets that are capable of handling those kinds of passes. We know that he can run. So instead of it being like, okay, this is a one-time thing because the opposing defense just so happened to give us something we could use, like what can we do to create situations like that? And that's what I'd like to see more of. And that's the thing that it's things like that that make me wonder, can we really count on McCarthy to do that? Or is it about time for people to start calling for like seeing more play calling from Shoddy? But I don't know. Maybe it's too soon. Let's see what happens after the bye week.
One of my biggest thing is like you brought some good points. Is can we keep it consistent? Because when it's we'll go from having a really good game and then we go back to that stagnant old offense and it doesn't work out, and then we go back and forth. Like, can we keep the consistent utilizing our like Mike McCarthy kept saying, a complimentary offense. And when you see it, when you have a bad game, you don't see compliment. It's like you're forcing things that don't work to the players you have. The definition of compliment is like complimenting the type of players you have. And we got to see that against the Chargers. We didn't get to see that with the 49ers, but I just hope that we keep it moving forward where you're utilizing your weapons right.
I think the 49ers game is going to be a wake up call for them. I think, and this is something else just listening to the coaches talk about it, they didn't expect to see so much man coverage. And so I just think, like, between seeing it in that game, and I think they even saw more of it with the Chargers than they expected, I think that's going to wake them up to some of the things that they're going to have to do offensively and some of the things that they're going to have to be more aware of. I also think just with the offensive line becoming more cohesive, like, yes, we've got our starters in there, but it's like they've literally never played together before. And just like listening to them talk about the amount of what they do that relies on communication and being on the same page and kind of knowing instinctively what everybody else on the line is going to do and how they move and being used to it. I think certain things will get better as they get used to one another. But yeah, I really just think that, yeah, an evolution needs to happen. I'll sum it up that way.
So I appreciate y'all for being on the show. But before we let y'all go, I wanted to let y'all have the floor where they can check out y'all's podcast or anything y'all got going on. So we'll go with Jazz first.
Sure. If you go to bitcheslovesports.com, spelled exactly how it sounds, you can find our Twitter and our YouTube, which is the main places that we post everything. I recently started putting stuff on Spotify again, but a lot of stuff is on YouTube, and then like I tweet every day. And then there's also a link to everything that I write for Inside the Star. New article just came out today. So bitcheslovesports.com.
So for me, I laugh because I write so much. Pro Football Network, I'm writing constantly every day. That's my like 9 to 5. I cover the Cowboys for Blogging the Boys. I write over there, and then I cover high school and college football, New England Football Journal. You can find me on the First and 10 podcast on the Blogging the Boys network with my co-host Aiden Davis. And like I said, every week, every day, it's something new. So I appreciate you guys having us on.
Absolutely.
I should put this out there that she has probably the best name for a podcast ever, because people are going to just click on it just because of the name.
The name has been a point of discussion because there are some people who are like, that name is going to hold you back. And there are other people who are like, no, that name is going to get you attention. And I'm just like, I like it, so I'm going to stick with it.
It's a t-shirt. Y'all got some merch now. Y'all got some merch.
Thank you.
This has been Tacos and Touchdown. But before I let you go, Shane, you got anything going on?
Not really. Whenever I'm not here, I'm over there doing producing over at iHeartMedia, and I appreciate your patience with that. They finally gave me a Thursday night off. Every now and then it's like, oh, come in the morning, hey, come in the evening, and it's nice to have a rotating schedule, but it's also kind of hard to plan everything around. But I wasn't finna miss a double whammy show like this.
Absolutely. I appreciate iHeartMedia for letting my co-hosts come on the show. I appreciate y'all. But this has been Tacos and Touchdown, and happy Taco Thursday. I hope y'all getting some good tacos somewhere for sure. But y'all have a good one. Peace.
You too. Thank you.